Hello and welcome. Today we've got John Dowling, and today we're going to be discussing the Iraq, the BRICS summit, and we're going to talk about the Israel attack on the power plants and also oil, gold, and silver. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Instagram channel at nicholas.veniamin, where you can follow all my daily news reels. John, thank you so much for joining me. How are you, and what have you been up to?
Nicholas, good to see you again. Good sir. Thanks for having me once again. I've been overwhelmed with the details, as you know, with the state of affairs of the world and the financial situation, which we'll be discussing as always. And just trying to keep a level head as all the details swirl around. How are you doing?
Very, very good. Waiting for things to happen. Really enjoyed seeing Donald Trump dissing Kamala Harris, working 15 minutes much more longer in McDonald's. That was
Yeah.
a very interesting thing. But also, you can see he's actually getting the hands on, making people happy, learning how it is in the real world. And that's the kind of leadership we need for not only the United States, but the world.
Absolutely. And it was a brilliant PR move, whoever designed that, because it was a way for him to engage with the fans and kind of kill two birds with one stone. So it was a very smart tactical move. But yeah, I enjoyed that as well.
Absolutely. Now, when you say BRICS summit, what does that mean? If for someone that has no idea what BRICS is, why don't you summarize what the BRICS is and
Mhm.
what is happening in the summit, and then tie it in with Iraq at the end?
Sure. Do you want me to roll into the presentation or explain
Oh,
that first?
you know what? Let's explain that first, and
Yeah,
then we'll go straight into the presentation. That's
because
because
I
I
can
know
kill two.
I want to let the viewers know that you also do have a presentation that you want to show us.
I do. This way I can show some visual matrices and then kill two birds with one stone to your question. So let me get started with that
Sure,
uh, for posterity. Let me know when you're able to see it.
I can see it.
Great. Okay, so this is, Nick, the presentation as promised that we were preparing. This is, we're calling it BRICS 2024, the final countdown. Uh, and BRICS, to your question, stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These are the five largest countries and conglomerates that have put together this BRICS summit. It's been worked on for probably a year to year and a half behind the scenes. It's spearheaded primarily, as you know, by President Vladimir Putin, of Russia, who met with a lot of countries to engender interest in getting this summit prepared. And the whole idea behind it has been a number of things, but primarily two key things, Nicholas, which one is to de-dollarize away from the dollar hegemony, and two, to nationalize all the countries within BRICS and help them to power up their currencies, aka the godly global currency reset, which we talk about often. So hopefully that answers your question for the
Yeah.
novice viewers who are just kind of getting involved in this movement. And the three key things are watching the signs, staying faithful, not fearful. In preparation as a good segue to that, to thwart off the fear contingency. If you're being prepared mentally and physically and with supplies and investing, then you're not concerned about it because you're staying ahead of the comms that are being put out. So let's go to slide 2. And so here's sort of the news of interest, Nicholas, that's going on right now. So uh, we had over the weekend, we had from Beirut, Hezbollah's financial institutions were attacked by Israel. So what Israel is doing is they're focusing right now on Lebanon and taking out some of the Hezbollah factions, right? And I sent you an article, which you can share with your audience accordingly, that they had actually planned to hit the power plants in the missile sections of Iran, per Kim Clement's prophecy, on October 16th. That was leaked out by the deep state in the US to try to thwart that off. We now believe that they probably at this point will wait until President Trump is officially reinstalled optically. As you know, he's the commander in chief, but for optical purposes, for the novice people, once he is appointed the rightful president of the new constitutional republic, that's when we think Israel will summon the attack, right? So we see here that President Erdogan of Turkey sort of quietly and surreptitiously has been working with Netanyahu. It looks like they're enemies, but they're actually working together. You see here, get on here. You can see here, Putin has a very strong relationship with Prince Mohammed bin Salman, has for years. Spent a lot of time on this BRICS summit trying to persuade and woo over bin Salman because of the massive amount of resources and oil that they have. And then an interesting little com here that you know about, Nick. President Trump was on Fox the other day saying that military base will be sworn for 17 days. You've heard him talk on other Fox videos where he has 17 businesses. So that number 17 is coming up quite a bit. And for those who know, they know exactly why. So the stage is being set behind the scenes. This is an incredibly important week, Nick, for the timing of this podcast, because the BRICS, I've talked to you many, many times on our podcast about BRICS. This week, starting tomorrow, the 22nd and 24th, they'll be meeting in Kazan, and we'll talk about some of the countries in a minute in this PowerPoint presentation, who those countries that are already on board and who is coming on board in the very near future. So let's focus mostly on Iraq. They are a member of the WTO, the World Trade Organization now. They are a member of BRICS. That's incredibly important. This week we have, this week we have some very important happenings. I don't know if you're aware, Nick, but last week Iraq opened up 2 embassies, one in Dublin and one in Zagreb. That's a telltale sign that they're coming back to the international stage. Soudani met with Erdogan in Turkey, I believe it was either late August or early September. I'm not sure the exact date, but he already went over there with respect to getting behind the scenes the oil and gas law officially put together. That is slated to happen this week. I'll show on a subsequent slide here that Mugadashi is going to be the new Speaker of the House. Just like we had the new Speaker of the House here in the States, Johnson, you couldn't exist as a country in America without a Speaker of the House. Iraq is no different. So they're going to be putting in Mugadashi most likely this week. When they do that, we think that they're going to then put in the oil and gas law. That should bring out or smoke out Maliki, who is an Obama holdover since 2010. Obviously, one of the foes in this story. And once that happens, then we are watching to see when Israel will hit those power plants. So there's really the 3 key things that we would recommend people focus on. It'll be, as Kim Clement said, a why now moment. Everybody will be looking at Israel. No one will be looking at Iraq. It's the perfect time for them to form an emergency government, pass all the important laws, get the oil and gas law and the tax and tariffs at the board that we've discussed before. So there's a whole bunch of synchronicity going on right now. Here's another key thing, Nick, to focus in on. International companies investing in agriculture in Iraq. Also, Iraq announced a week ago that they have an uptick in population. Most people would say, why is that important? It's important because, as you know, Nick, living in a major city like myself, when you have a lot of people, you have to build a lot of infrastructure, right? Buildings and shopping centers and airports and the like to accommodate that upsurge in population. What does that signal? That signals the reconstruction projects, all part of returning to an international stage. So as you see these pieces coming together, it's very important. Iraq has increased its reserves at the IMF by 50%. They're also number 9 in the world in gold buying. They're number 30th in the world roughly in gold reserves. So that's also significant. It tells you that their currency is going to be gold backed, among many other things. So now we go to the next slide, and here's the aforementioned Mugadashi, slated to be picked either tomorrow or on the 23rd. What a coincidence, right around the time that the BRICS is happening. So you literally cannot script this stuff. Also notice that as Bitcoin, Nick, is moving up, then you start to have the discussion of Israel and the power plants here from CNN. You also have Xi announcing from China that he's preparing his country for war with China-Taiwan, which we'll discuss in a minute, why that's significant. We just mentioned, obviously, the aggressive purchasing of gold from said Iraq. Last week, they hit one of the oil refineries in Iran. So I think once they hit the missile sites and they start to hit the power plants, not only as we're going to see in a moment that gold and silver are moving up aggressively, but so too eventually will the price of oil.
Yeah, with Bitcoin, do you think that they're trying to keep it down? So they want to, they make an announcement. Bitcoin goes up, they make an announcement, and then it's a way of suppressing Bitcoin because maybe they're scared. They I don't know who's doing that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think the Patriots are doing that to give it's a buying opportunity, just like with XRP. That's another example, right? We have XRP doing a counterclaim against the SEC, and that battle is going on. But that will be a sudden ending too, because Judge Torres knows there's no basis behind any of that. So what people have to understand is when these things happen, it's a buying opportunity. But what I think they're also doing, Nick, is they're swapping in the former corruption for gold backing. That's why you're seeing gold tethering itself to said XRP and Bitcoin. That's where it's going. Whether people can see it or not, they will eventually, because you can see the price of gold going up. And you start to see the markets go down, meaning the stock market, money has to move to other places. Where does it typically move? Precious metals and commodities, right? So that kind of dovetails what you were talking about with respect to Bitcoin. But I think the good guys are ultimately in control of that. It's moves and counter moves at this point.
Yeah.
So switching very quickly to Vietnam, it's been quiet on the Western front, as the old expression goes, for Vietnam. But I just mentioned a minute ago that Xi is preparing his country for war. It's not really going to be war. It's rumors of war. It will look like things seem at their worst, and then we'll be set free just like that. It'll be in one day, it'll shift. But Taiwan says it's on alert. We talked about China. Here's a visual example. So what we're watching is for Putin to just, he's already won in Ukraine. I think everybody kind of knows that here. But it's, he's already dealt with Donbass and Lugansk, which are basically Russian citizens living there. Those are, for all intents and purposes, Russian provinces. The Russian government has rebuilt a lot of the infrastructure in terms of apartments and houses, condo buildings, and the like over there. They've given rations of good food and bread and water to help the people out for a while now. But it's just a matter of it optically coming to a close, whereby they can finish that quote unquote war with Ukraine that has really been long exacerbated, I think we all know, and that will position them to go in with China for a short, 1 to 2 day quote invasion of Taiwan. And because they don't want to do a full scale thing, because Taiwan has all kinds of booby traps and they're prepared for this. They're very stealthy people. They would hit one of the water towers in China, and that would wipe out a lot of people. So they don't really want that to happen. But it has to look that way so that, as I've said before, Vietnam can be freed up enough, not 100%, but enough of kind of communism to emerge, because they do have a ton of silver. They've got oil, they've got gold, they've got a lot of things they don't talk about. And they've got a very strong manpower, I think, which most people know. So that would be something to watch as well as far as Vietnam is concerned. Pivoting to Zimbabwe really quickly, we've talked about this before. Nelson Chamisa is a Christian. He's God's choice. He's also the choice of Trump and Elon Musk. And you know that because Elon Musk has been working with them for some time on Starlink, where one is connected, the other's connected. BRICS just offered Zimbabwe escape from IMF. Why would they do that? Because Zimbabwe has the largest amount of gold reserves, bar none in the world. Anybody who's traveled there is well aware of that fact, or has just done any sort of cursory research. So China offered Zimbabwe $300 million to go in and mine metals. That should tell you something. They turned it down because they want to refine their own gold, which is smart on their part. So Chamisa is sitting here in the background. Once he comes back in optically, like Trump, like many other countries, then you will start to see that country thrive. Now, they did gold back the ZIG dollar and the ZIG coin, gold coin. The bonds will be waiting in the background, we believe, and be tucked in to the ZIG framework. So it'll be one currency backed by gold. It'll just be easier for everybody to do it that way. So that's what we believe people need to be watching for with respect to Zimbabwe. As far as Venezuela is concerned, they need a regime change, just like a lot of other countries. Once we see this guy Maduro taken out, remember Trump said in his 2019 State of the Union, Juan Guaido would be the replacement. So we'll have to be watching for them. I mean, they're a very powerful country, fourth largest economy in the world historically. Things always return back to their center. Tons of oil, which people know. They also have a lot of gold and silver and many, many other things. So they're set up into the BRICS as well, and rightly so. So let's talk about precious metals real briefly. I have an update, Nick, on the numbers. We did this, my team and I, Judy, Jay, and our team did this. She sends her regards, by the way, big fan of yours, and like all of us. And she and I worked on this copiously over the weekend. And so as of last night when we took this, gold was at 27.30.96, silver 34.04. It's now, as of minutes before we got on, $34.35 for silver, and gold at 27.51 even. Those are all-time highs historically. So as we said earlier, as the dollar weakens and the market is, we know, is false, money is going to find its way into other things. And here's a good example. Here's an article here, Nick. We were talking about XRP, right? So XRP has now, let me move up the screen here. XRP has come up with their own ETF. That's very exciting because that's them telling you they're going to be a powerhouse for the new digital economic system, and it will be gold backed. XDC, same thing. These are going to be used for scalable bridge payments for said BRICS. We just using an article here, Supreme Court ruling, state-sponsored banks can disband from the Federal Reserve System and issue their own currency. Now, as of earlier this month, Nick, October 1st was the first day of the new fiscal year, not the calendar year, fiscal meaning financial here in the West. That represents the US and, of course, you and the whole of Europe. For the Middle East, it's April 1st. So that's significant because the banks, all the tier one banks, your Wells Fargo, Chase, HSBC, Bank of America, et cetera, have been forced to be Basel III compliant, which again, for those who don't know, means that they have to show transparency in their balance sheets exactly how much gold and silver they're holding, right? Because most people don't know, I think most people here know, but in the whole society don't know that they don't have the cash reserves to cover people's money, right? And that goes back to fractional reserve banking, watering down the dollar against gold when Nixon and Kissinger took us off the gold standard in 71. So what we're seeing is a resurgence. I'm sorry?
You mean Richard Nixon?
Yes, Richard Nixon, yeah. And that was he was largely persuaded by Henry Kissinger under the cloak and dagger of night to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I'm just reprising this for people. I know there's a lot of historical buffs here, so I want to make sure that we're covering the bases. But again, it's just showing you the merging, Nick, of the new digital economic reality, backing, not pegged, to real hard assets. That's going to be the order of the day. So we move forward. Again, this covers what we talked about already. You know, the genesis or the origin of BRICS and the countries, some of the countries that they're tied to, as you can see. We've kind of covered that now. So we can move forward to the next slide, which is, this is the latest update we have found, Nicholas, of BRICS, what it comprises, what countries. You can see last year what their percentages were for wheat harvesting, for the GDP. We figure right now with the 50 to 60 countries that they have on board already, that roughly accounts for about 50% of the world's population. When they hit their peak, which will be somewhere between 160 to, who knows, 200 some odd countries, which would be mostly the world, it'll be well over 90% of the world's population. The US is a little different because we were the ones that forced the dollar hegemony on everybody. So it's our contention that as BRICS now this week, whether they say it or not, watch what they do, not what they say. Their actions will show that they're de-dollarizing. As a result, they're going to power up their currencies and set assets. We believe by next year that will force the gold standard that we believe President Trump is already actively engaging. He's probably going to bring in Judy Shelton to the Fed, who's a big gold bug, and that will change the contextual layer and the quality of the new U.S. note to actually be one-for-one gold-backed. So they'll be pretty significant. So these are some of the countries, and you can see number 46, Iraq is on the list, and Vietnam is in there, and Zimbabwe. So it's pretty exciting for what we're all anticipating in terms of the reset. So we'll just kind of finish up here as always. We want to thank the late, great Kim Clement and his family for all the prophetic words that he prophesied many, many years ago. April 4th, 2007, he prophesied that President Trump would be the president. A hot-blooded man that was not a praying man would be put in the White House as a praying man in the highest seat in the land. In other words, a transformation. And what we work on a lot is Hebrews 11:1 faith, which is not about documents and human proof, but things that you hope and pray for that have not yet been seen. That is the key in all this. So that's basically the end of the presentation.
Lovely. And when Kim Clement says Israel forever, or Israel is forever, what does he mean by that? Because some people, we know that Israel is, occupied and controlled by Zionists, by fake Jews. They want Israel. So what does he mean by Israel is forever?
He means the true Jews of Israel, not the Zionists and the Khazarian mafia. He's talking about the true believing Jews in Israel that actually want peace and prosperity. As you'll recall, President Trump went in 2017 and established Jerusalem as the capital. Many politicians promised that but never delivered. That was a sign to that. So that's what Kim was referring to specifically.
Of course, and a lot of people think that it's we need to remember that even in the Bible it says that they pretend to be Jews, but they are not. Okay, that's the exact words, but I don't know
Correct.
exactly which passage. But it's very interesting because they're Zionists and they use Israel and Jews to cover and mask their real identity, which is Satanism, which is darkness. So
Sure.
I've come across a few like authentic Jews, and they've said that there's dark people, in the community that are doing this and this and this, and we don't agree with this. We don't want this. We want peace. So we have to remember that.
Absolutely right.
So, so to summarize your
Mhm.
presentation, what's happening is we're going to go gold backed. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and when Q, the 17th letter of the alphabet, which is why you said Trump mentioned something 17. He always says 17, 17
Right.
times or 17 whatever,
Mhm.
and a lot of people, would say that Trump speaks in riddles. So he won't mention the word or the letter Q, but he would mention the letter 17,
Right.
which is a riddle. W- um, now, talk to me about when 17Q says Israel last. What does that mean? Why last? Why Israel last?
Well, I mean, that's subject to a lot of interpretation, obviously, but we believe that what that means is what we are talking about. Israel will be the ones that hit the power plants of Iran. That'll be a why now moment because everybody would be looking at Israel. They won't be looking at Iraq, as I said earlier. But what that will do is free up the entire Middle East because it'll also free up Iran because Iran's been the big brother to Iraq and they've had to live off of Iraq in terms of suppressing them using the dollar, lots of money laundering. So Israel will be the last one to kind of split the difference. I use a visual analogy, Nick, of bowling. Everybody's gone bowling, and obviously you want to try to get a strike, but often that doesn't happen. You get what they call a 7-10 split. One pin on one side, one at the corner of the back of the of the pin range, right by the gutter ball area, and so Israel is in this case the bowling ball, and they're going to be the one that splits the difference because we have U.S. military factions in Iraq that have held them down. You have Iran, I just mentioned, so you have to have a way to take those two pieces of corruption out to free up Iraq. Israel will split the difference, but what people have to understand, Nick, to your point, is that it doesn't just free up Iraq. It also frees up Iran, as I mentioned, but it also frees up Palestine, Syria, Turkey. That's why Turkey's involved in these negotiations. Are also part of BRICS, not a coincidence, because of the oil agreements, right? Erdogan is a key factor in that. So Israel will be last in terms of making the last statement or stand, if you like,
Yeah.
that separates all of the Middle East and Southeast Asia, which Kim Clement also pointed out. People forget that in the prophecy, which includes Vietnam, it includes Indonesia. Also, Nick, just a sidebar, the recommendation, again, I'm not a financial advisor. This does not constitute financial advice. We're giving good team information that people can use to draw their own conclusions and discernmental ability, respectively. So that being said, one other country people I think should watch, we know Venezuela, we've mentioned that, but North and South Korea, because I think once Trump is back, he's going to be working all these peace deals out, which we believe he's kind of already done. But we're talking about optically at this point for posterity. He's going to be working with North and South Korea because there will be a short war there, and those two countries will merge. I don't know what they're going to call it, but once they merge, then we should see that currency become very valuable as well. That's a little tip for your audience. So, but that's what Israel basically is for.
Absolutely. Let's talk about, Iran. Obviously, previously in the last couple of weeks, we saw Iran attack Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Um, there's supposedly supposed to be, from what you sent me today, you sent me an article regarding Israel possibly attacking Iran again. Is that true?
Yes, that's
And
what we're waiting. Go
and
ahead.
and then I mean, when does it stop? I mean, it's like Israel attacks Iran, Iran attacks Israel, Israel attacks Iran. When does it stop? What happens?
When Israel hits those power plants of Iran and the nuclear missile sites there, it'll be done. It'll look like World War III. Everybody's going to panic and freak out and think chemical, chemicals will be going into the air and implosions will be happening. It will look like, Harry Carey, and people will.
What are the power points? The power plants. What is that?
Well, they have Iran has a plethora of nuclear missiles, and they have secret power plants that with uranium that can, has a lot of nuclear energy, basically, and that it could be construed as being used for weapons of war. So again, back to your question, why is Israel last? Because they will make the last stand or the last strike to stop that, and it will look like chaos. And then all of a sudden, oh no, everything's fine; it's been contained. But that is enough of a distraction away from what's happening with Iraq, and some of the other currencies are coming up in the rear. That's why this is so significant.
But if Israel attack Iran and get rid of Iran's power, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
isn't that a bad thing if the Zionists are controlling in Israel and calling the shots?
It would be if they were, but we don't believe they are. We
Okay,
believe
so
that,
you're saying it's a 17Q thing
yeah,
going on.
yeah, we think this is made to, it's Genesis 50:20. What the enemy means for harm, God will use for the good of saving of all souls. It will be moves and counter moves where the good guys are actually running this, but it will look one way, but it's actually something else.
So okay, so how does Israel lose power in this? Because you did mention that Israel holds a lot of countries enslaved to Israel because of the oil and stuff.
No, I was talking about Iran. Iran was
Oh,
holding down their little brother Iraq by using money laundering, because you have corrupt proxy leadership within Iraq from Iran, right?
so you're
And so
saying if Israel attacks the Iranian power plants, then for some reason they Iran loses power and other countries will be freed. Is that what you're saying?
right, because a lot of the proxies in the government of Iraq that are Iranian in nature will flee. They'll, just like here in America, Trump's going to drain the swamp of the House and the Senate that have a lot of rats and surreptitious people. There'll be a clean out. So too will there be a clean out overseas with respect to the Iranian proxies within the government of Iraq. And as you may have noticed already, a lot of the military, in not completely, of course, but a lot of the military in the U.S. is having an exit plan to leave Iraq.
And how
So.
does this affect Iraq's currency? Because there's people that email me all the time. How do I get Iraqi currency? Because what they believe is that the Iraqi currency, which is peanuts right now, which is very weak currency,
Mhm.
because the Federal Reserve applies currency manipulators on that currency. How people they say to me that it's going to revalue when they gain back their power, their purchasing power. It's going to go, one for one to the
Mhm.
dollar or above or below or thereabouts. Explain that to me.
Well, so we've been here before. I mean, Iraq has had a high currency before during the Saddam Hussein regime. So this isn't the first time. It's actually a reinstatement. But I think the question, if I'm interpreting what you're asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're asking is how can this happen? Um, Iraq has not been showing their true rate on the Forex. That is a suppressed program rate. People in the world, part of the cognitive dissonance people have is because they don't have the right information. They are assuming the rate on the Forex is the real rate. It is not. The real rate is in the private sector, which is the Ministry of Planning. Now, if you look at the articles that I put on my Telegram, I've shown you, offline. The reason I bring that up to you is to answer these types of questions as they are increasing construction, as they continue to talk about the private sector, that's a clue that they're coming back onto the international stage. These are all mechanisms needed to make Iraq strong again, backed up by their assets. They've been living off the dollar, which you're not supposed to do, right? That's money laundering. And you have a lot of the politicians there, not unlike here in America or I'm sure in Europe, living off the dollar to keep the people down and to keep the currency perceived as weak. As these things are happening right in front of us, right before our eyes, it's kind of hard to argue because you can see the evidence more and more when you can see it. That is going to force Iraq to live on their natural assets. That's what BRICS is so wholly important, because that's going to help de-dollarize from the dollar and nationalize. What is nationalize? Nationalize means nations will be sovereign again, and they will live on their own currency based on assets in the ground. And again, Iraq has tons of oil. We know that they have gold, they have diamonds, silver, a lot of phosphorus as well. People don't know that largest amount of phosphorus in the world is produced in the grounds of Iraq. So they can easily live and then make their currency backed on that. They, just because of the corruption, they have chosen not to. But that's what's happening now is you're having, it's really all about corruption, Nick, and switching from the corruption to the authenticity of revealing the truth of what's been behind the scenes the whole time.
Of course. I mean, this is something that I learnt a couple of years ago from my own viewers. They were telling me about the Iraqi dinar, because I used to do interviews with a gentleman called, or his alias stage name for his podcast was called Pimpy. Don't know if anyone remembers him.
Yes.
But yeah, we've done so many interviews together with other people regarding the currency revaluation. And even Donald Trump, mentioned that he's, concerned about the devaluation of currencies, and he all wants to be in a level playing field that other countries can compete fairly. And I think, and I think that's fair, and I think, that's very interesting. But it's peanuts right now, and if people are buying this currency right now, are you saying that when it goes to 1 for 1, people could become millionaires?
At least, probably much more.
And why isn't it spoken about more than it should be, in my opinion?
Because,
From
yeah, no,
from like Trump
yeah.
or someone like that, a little bit more,
Well, I mean, look, you want the honest truth? The powers that be, and you look at Forbes, you look at Yahoo Finance, you look at the Wall Street Journal. None of them are going to talk about it because they don't want the general public to be wealthy. They already know 1% of us, or some derivation of 1% of us, know about it. Like people on these podcasts, they want to contain it down. They don't want everybody to get rich, because the more people get rich, the less the power is in their hands. But again, God's people are supposed to be wealthy, not for the sake of avaricious greed, but to be, as Kim Clement said, to be a blessing to the poor, the lonely, the sick, the hungry, the needy. Some humans who are not Christians might call it humanitarian funding, whatever you want to call it. The idea here is to be generous. We're not supposed to live in lack. So the answer to your question is greed and control and corruption, the same as it ever was. It's always been that to this point, but that is now changing.
It's not just the Iraqi dinar, though, is it? You've got the Vietnamese dong that people are talking about. Which other currencies? But they're saying that the Iraqi dinar will go first. Which
Right.
other ones are expected to go that are heavily weak on currency, manipulated by the Federal Reserve, and people are buying these currencies?
So you've got the dinar. We've got the Vietnamese dong, as you mentioned. We have the Venezuelan bolivar. We've got the Thai baht. We've got the North and South Korean won. I mentioned, of course, the Zimbabwe bonds. There will be several countries that will go in. We obviously we start with the dinar this year. We believe personally that China Taiwan is going to happen this year, because think about it, Nick. Why would they want to attack when Trump's back in optically? The first thing he's going to do is power up the military. That would be counterproductive. So we would see those first two going this year, the remainder of this year. And then next year, like I said, Thai baht, bolivar, North South Korean won, and a whole host of other countries will go in some type of order. They're not all going to go at once, because that would be insider trading and it would flood the banks, and they have a certain order that they want to do this. But there's many countries that will flourish as a result of the removal of the dollar as the hegemony.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to leave a link below in the description for anyone that wants to look at foreign currencies, so they can get some for themselves as well. But John, it's been an absolute honor to have you on my show. Thank you very, very much. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
Well, as always, Nick, thanks for having me. It's always an honor. I appreciate your trust in bringing us on to help our audiences navigate through this historic time that we will never see again. Just keep the faith, folks. Don't look at how things appear. Look at what they do, not what they say. The articles are one thing, but using your faith discernment and asking God to guide you in terms of what is truth and what is not would be the most important recommendation that I could give people at this time. But I will say this, Nick. Kim Clement also said, "Hypnotic November and Christmas, I will make them happy. Do with that what you will."
Well, let's see which Christmas it shall be, but very
Mm-hmm.
interesting, John. But thank you,
Indeed.
and we'll speak again very soon. You take care and God bless. Bye bye.
Take care, Nick.